When we planned for a road trip in the western US, we had two wishes. One, there were some really gorgeous pictures we saw online where we wanted to go but didn't know the name of those places. And two, there were some really big places like Yosemite Park and the Grand Canyon, and we didn't know exactly where to go in those big places. After our trip, we mapped everything on this map with their GPS locations and some photos. So before we start going through this map, let's take a look at the highlight reel of our trip. We drove nearly 6,000 kilometers over 15 days, spent about 86 hours driving the SUV. For the rest of the video, I'm going to show you real footage recorded during our trip to give a sense of what you would actually see on a road trip in this part of the United States. Not the glorious drone shots or Instagram type videos. If you just want to check out the key places to visit on our map, you can find the custom map link in the video description below. To bookmark this video for later, hit the like button now so that when it's time to book your trip, you can find this video easier in your YouTube liked video playlist. Here are some lessons we learned during the trip. First, buy and bring lots of water. We started our trip in Las Vegas and we bought an 18-pack bottled water plus 2 4-liter jugs from the Walmart there. There were 4 of us in the SUV and we finished all of that water in 2 days. So keep in mind that most of the driving is in desert conditions with temperature going as high as 50 degrees Celsius in places like the Hoover Dam. Once you leave Vegas, you're driving along highways in the middle of nowhere and it gets difficult and very expensive to buy water near national parks and tourist attractions. We try to stock up on water whenever we reach a mid-sized town that has a supermarket. Most national parks like the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, and Yosemite has waiting lines at the entrance. So budget about half an hour for waiting in line in your car. Once inside the Grand Canyon National Park, the closest viewpoint to the parking lot is the Mathers Point. It has a great view of the canyon and is absolutely breathtaking. However, it is also very crowded with tourists. I would suggest to not linger at Mather Point and take the blue shuttle bus right away, followed by the orange bus. You get a better view of the Colorado River further down the bus route. There's also a lot less people there, and you'll have more freedom to take some nice pictures halfway down that orange bus route. There's no data coverage at all in any of the national parks. We purchased a $50 prepaid cell phone plan from AT&T in Vegas, and it gave us 8 gigabytes of data and unlimited phone calls for 30 days. Cell phone plans are ridiculously cheap in the US. I saw AT&T had a prepaid plan where you can get 8 gigabytes per month and pay only $25 per month if you enter a 1-year contract. That's about half the price we pay in Canada. Having data was very helpful during the trip for downloading maps, looking up coupons for fast food restaurants, and just for checking emails. Both AT&T and T-Mobile had prepaid plans that provided 4G LTE data and SIM cards to swap into our phone. Check their data coverage map before you go on your trip, because we found that since most of the trip is in rural areas, many towns are only covered by one service provider. For example, when we stayed at a town called Page, it only had T-Mobile data coverage and we weren't able to access internet on our AT&T plan. Try to download offline maps whenever you get a Wi-Fi access in the hotels. From Vegas to Hoover Dam, we had full LTE AT&T coverage. There was no coverage at all at Grand Canyon, and going into Page and 3 hours out of Page, there was still no signal. We had coverage again when we got to Monticello. Some hotels will call you or email you 2 days before your reservation to confirm, and make sure you have data or phone plan to receive those calls and emails. There was a hotel that almost canceled on us because we didn't reply to their phone calls. And that was because I took off my domestic SIM card and put in the US SIM card. And they didn't have my new number. So worth checking that, double checking with the hotel and updating them phone numbers if you can. We stayed at a place called Page, and it's actually very pretty with a big dam and with a lake powwow behind the dam. And there's also some canyon views there as well. It was a surprise to us. It's worth the extra time if you have it to visit there. We stayed at the Sleep Inn on the Scenic View Road in Page. At the beginning of the trip, while you're in a big city, it's a good idea to get a cooler, some forks and spoons, and some microwavable containers. The large cooler helps keep cold drinks and perishable foods. We use the cutlery to eat food while in parks, picnic style. So sometimes there's no restaurants nearby and you just have to eat it out of the car. Sandwiches were great when we were out in parks for lunch. And canned soup and noodles were great when we arrived at hotels late at night and just wanted to heat up some food really quickly with the microwave instead of going out to eat. While all hotels we went to had microwaves, they don't provide any microwavable cups or containers to heat up drinks or food. So we bought some at the Vegas Walmart. You can also shop for some big items while in Vegas. The tax is 8.25% there. And for expensive items like camera gear, it's cheaper than Canada, for example. We also brought a power bar with us. Even though most hotels have enough plugs, there were a few that only had just 1 or 2 wall outlets. And if you have 4 people charging multiple phones, maybe a smartwatch, camera, beard trimmer, all that adds up to 7 or 8 outlets that you need. What we did not need was a second power bank. We brought 2 or maybe even 3 power banks with us, thinking we needed to charge the camera during the day and so on. But having a good car charger was enough, basically. So I brought a car charger that charged straight out of the car and gave a 2 amp USB charge for phones and cameras and such. And the rest can be charged overnight in hotels. All the hotels provided clean towels, so if you want, you don't have to bring extra towels. And we also found we did not need bug spray. Even in wooded area in Yosemite Park in September, we were wearing shorts and there wasn't really any need for bug sprays throughout the trip. So Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, that's all fine. There's a very famous arc, a stone arc called Mesa Arc that you see a lot in photos and videos, travel pictures and such. Ironically, that arc is not in the Arcs National Park. It's actually in the Canyons National Park. And it's a very busy place. I would say as busy as Antelope Canyon, which we found out was just packed with people. So if you plan to visit the Mesa Arc, plan an extra day if you want to go. And if you want to take that iconic photo, you got to arrive very early. For our trip, we rented a SUV from Enterprise. And just make sure you take a video of the car before you go so that all the sort of damages previously are noted. On the first day, take the car to one of those gas stations. They usually have pumps for air and you can check the tire pressure. Surprisingly, we had one that was 10 psi higher than normal. And it was 43 versus 33 normal. So definitely check that out. You don't want a blown out tire when you're out in the middle of nowhere. You also want a car with a fog light. Sometimes you're driving at night and there's no street light and it's just pure darkness. The fog light does help light up the roads better that way. We had a Nissan SUV. I checked the odometer before and after the trip. The total mileage was noted before. and it was driving about 7.3 liter per 100 kilometers or 32.2 miles per gallon, which I thought was really good. So because you're driving the tires sometimes towards like 40 degrees, like for example Hoover Dam, and sometimes really hot in the desert on highways, just make sure the tire pressure is normal. Basically, don't trust what the car dealership or the rental company tells you. Check it yourself in a gas station to make sure the tire pressure is okay. You also want to get a car that has cruise control for those long stretches of driving. And you also want a Bluetooth in the car for your music and for Google Maps and such. Right now you're looking at the Old Faithful geyser going off. It's one of the most iconic viewpoints in Yellowstone. And it's very easy to access a big parking lot. Just make sure you arrive early so you can find the actual viewpoints. It's gated off so that people stay at a distance from the geyser. And weather-wise, we were, for the most part, in the desert states like Arizona, Nevada, and Utah. It was very dry, and so you might need lotion for your skin and eye drops for your eyes if you're driving for a long time. And buying water in 28 packs didn't seem like too much. We're perfectly fine wearing shorts and shirts in Arizona, Nevada, and Utah. But as soon as we crossed into Wyoming, it got very cold very quickly. It was about 5 degrees outside, and we needed to wear full winter jackets and long pants. So if you don't plan on going to Yellowstone, you're fine just wearing shorts and shirts in the desert states. But if you do plan going up north to Yellowstone, make sure you pack winter jackets and warm long pants as well. Crossing over multiple state lines means your time zone will change a couple times during the trip. And it's important to sync the time between phones and cameras at the beginning of the trip, as well as each time you change the time zone, so that later on your photos and videos will line up nicely chronologically when you put them onto the computer. And despite whichever source it came from, they will all follow the same time sequence. We found that anchoring the phone to the dash wasn't the best way to record the video during the road trip. It was too shaky, and it would shake with any bumps of the car. So we did bring a car mount for the phone that attached it to the windshield, but we ended up recording most of our videos just hand holding the phone in the car, and that was like the least shaky, most stable way to record videos while on the road. The phone video recording, we found that one-time zoom was the best in terms of getting good colors out of the video. The ultra wide seemed like a good idea at the beginning, but actually the color's not as good. So right now you're looking at, I found was the best part of Yellowstone. It's called Boiling River, and on the right hand side it's ice cold. On the left side there's boiling water flowing in. So where those people are hanging out, that's just about warm. And it's a really cool place to visit. It's at the northern tip of Yellowstone. But definitely don't skip on this part. This is a small town called Lovelock we visited that I just wanted to show. It had nobody, no cars, no people. So in terms of driving conditions, it was very hard to drive in the mountains. So whether it's Yosemite Park or the Yellowstone, a lot of those roads are not hard to drive, but it's scary. So you're driving sometimes at the edge of a cliff, or there's very little shoulder, and you feel like your car's going to run into rock anytime you make a little turn. And it's just like this for hours and hours on end when you're driving in the mountains. And you get tired easily because you're so focused on steering. And so maybe plan for breaks every hour of driving. And also taking into account when you go into these parks, there's usually 5 to 10 minute waits for any washroom you can find. So those are all well eat into your time budget for these parts of the trip. It was much easier to drive in Nevada, and we're going to see some of those roads again later on. We had cloudy weather in San Francisco and when we were in Yellowstone. That depends on luck, and it's often raining in these places. Whereas in Nevada, in Utah, you really don't need luck. They're sunny pretty much all times of the day, all times of the year, and you can just visit anytime you want. Driving along the western coast on Highway 1 and along the scenic 70-mile drive, it's also sometimes near the edge of a cliff. So those drives, you got to pay a lot of attention as well. You do get to see the Pacific sunset. And I think, yeah, so you can only see sunset on the horizon if you are on the west coast. So that's something you can plan for. I found the best way to deal with photos and videos is to try to process them right away during the trip. If you leave them in the camera for a day, and then the backlog builds up quickly over the course of the trip, and you might need to wait a couple months after the trip to process it, and then it just gets dragged on forever. So try to get things down in camera, so like turning things on like vibrant mode for really colorful places like Antelope Canyon, so that the photos and the videos are almost good straight out of the camera. And sometimes in Lightroom, make sure you change the color profile from, for example, the default to camera vivid, for example, and that's going to change your photos quickly and dramatically. And then you can do those fine tweaks on sort of brightness and all that stuff later. I had all the photos developed during the trip when I was sitting in the when I was sitting next to the driver, or when we are in a hotel before we go to sleep. I'll do it at night. Driving in Nevada is very easy. You get these really straight roads, wide shoulders, clear sky, there's no bugs flying hitting the windshield, and all the cars cruise at constant speeds. So in the desert states, you can easily just cruise along the highway for hours and hours without getting tired, just as long as you've got all the water. Last, but the most important, don't forget to book your hotel way in advance. Those ones in the national park needs to be booked at least 6 months in advance. So I hope this video helps you plan your next road trip along the western parts of US. Until then, stay safe and well.